When people hear social credit system, they usually think of China. Blacklists, facial recognition, losing points for jaywalking, maybe even being punished for what you post online. It's often painted as this sci-fi nightmare, an authoritarian scorecard where the government controls every move you make. But here's the twist. While we point fingers and call it dystopian, we might have missed something important. Because the truth is, we're building something pretty similar ourselves, not with one official score and not run by the state, but through something much harder to see: likes, shares, algorithms, reviews, and the quiet power of digital reputation. We call it engagement, community guidelines, influence. But make no mistake, what you do online is shaping what you see, what you get access to, and how people treat you. So if we're scared of China's system, maybe we should talk about the one we're already living in. To start, let's clear something up, because what most people imagine when they hear China's social credit system doesn't really exist. There's no one all-powerful score that tracks your every move, no app that decides your life. Instead, it's more like a patchwork, a mix of tools and policies being rolled out at different speeds for different reasons. At its core, the system includes a financial credit network for banks, data sharing between government agencies, and a broader goal to build what officials call a trustworthy society. So yeah, it's complicated, and honestly kind of messy. Here, what's most developed right now, and it's not about individuals, it's about companies. China's set up a national database that tracks how businesses perform on things like taxes, safety, environmental rules. Regulators can check who's following the rules and who's cutting corners. Think of it like Yelp, but for corporations, except the reviewers are government agencies. Where it starts to look more intense is at the local level. Some cities like Rongcheng launched pilot programs that gave residents points for good behavior, things like donating blood or volunteering. Lose points for things like spreading harmful content online. These are the stories that blew up in Western media, but they weren't rolled out nationally. In fact, since 2020, Beijing's told local governments to scale those back, especially the ones that punish minor stuff, like jaywalking or not sorting your recycling. So again, it's not one giant system, and it's not all still running. But what's clear is that China is using tech and bureaucracy to steer behavior, not always clearly and definitely not evenly, but deliberately. Here where things flip. Because while we love to call China's system dystopian, the West has its own forms of behavior scoring just without the name. We've just outsourced it, privatized it, made it look normal. Let's start with the one we all know, the credit score, specifically the FICO score. It was introduced in 1989 and is now the standard tool for banks, landlords, even some employers to judge if someone's financially trustworthy. It's based on stuff like your payment history, your debt level, how long you've had credit, and how recently you've used it. But here's what it doesn't factor in: your income, your job, your savings. So someone working 2 jobs might have a low score, not because they're irresponsible, but because they're surviving. And what's worse, you don't always know how your score's calculated. There's no way to explain your story. It's just a number run by a private company shaping very real outcomes. A low score, that can mean higher interest rates, loan rejections, rental denials, and being locked out of basic services. So no, it's not called a social credit score, but functionally, it might as well be. But it goes beyond finance. If you're an Uber driver or an Airbnb host, your whole livelihood can hinge on your rating. One bad week or one annoyed customer can tank your score. And unlike traditional jobs, there's no union, no HR department, no real appeals process. Get too many bad reviews, you can be deactivated just like that, your ability to work gone. It's scoring again, but this time it's done by platforms, by users, by algorithms. And finally, let's talk about social media. Platforms claim they're just enforcing community guidelines, but moderation often feels arbitrary. People get shadow banned, demonetized, or outright banned, sometimes without knowing why. In this world, behavior is currency. Your access to attention, to audiences, to income, it all depends on playing by invisible rules. And who makes those rules? Not voters, not public institutions, but tech companies, quietly in the background. We like to think we've avoided what China's building. But in many ways, we've just chosen a different path to the same place. Where behavior is tracked. Where systems decide your worth. Where access is based on scores, even if we don't call them that. We didn't reject the social credit system. We just broke it into pieces, branded it as freedom, and called it progress. Let's go back to something simple: stars. 5 little stars that decide your ability to earn a living. Take Uber, for example. Drivers are rated by every passenger. The average of those ratings becomes your score, and it follows you trip after trip. You start at a perfect 5, but a handful of bad reviews, that number drops fast. Sure, Uber says it filters out unfair complaints, like if someone's mad about traffic. But the truth is, drivers rarely know what caused a dip. Ratings are anonymous, feedback is vague, and if your score gets too low, you can be deactivated, fired by an algorithm. This isn't just about convenience, it's about power and who gets to wield it. A study from Yale, Rice, and the University of Toronto analyzed nearly 70,000 customer reviews on a gig platform. The findings? Non-white workers consistently received lower ratings, small enough to seem invisible, but large enough to cause a 9% pay gap. When the platform replaced the 5-star system with a simple thumbs up down, that gap shrank. Fewer choices meant less space for unconscious bias to creep in. So while star ratings look fair, even nuanced, they often end up reinforcing inequality, quietly punishing the wrong people. And Uber, not alone. These systems are everywhere: delivery apps, freelance sites, customer service, even dating. Every interaction becomes a score, every person a profile to be judged. And behind it all's no real accountability. It's not just workers being rated, it's all of us. On Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, your content's visibility depends on opaque moderation systems, not just removing posts but reducing their reach, shadow banning, deamplifying, suppressing. Platforms say it's about safety, filtering harmful content or misinformation. But in practice, these systems often misfire. And here's the thing: when your post disappears from the feed, there's no message, no appeal, just silence. These platforms claim to promote free expression, but they're shaping which voices get heard and which vanish based on invisible decisions that even the companies themselves struggle to explain. And we used to think of surveillance as something governments did, watching you through cameras or tapping phones. Now it's different. We're the ones doing the watching, voluntarily. We film strangers in public, upload awkward moments, live stream drama, often without a second thought. Some of it's important, some of it's reckless, but either way, it's constant. That changes how we act. We perform a little more, we speak a little less freely, not because we're being directly told to behave, but because we know someone might be filming. Surveillance isn't just a tool of control anymore, it's part of the culture. And then there's the algorithm, maybe the most powerful judge of all. You're not just being seen by people anymore. You're being filtered, categorized, and ranked by systems, and those systems are far from neutral. They decide what goes viral, what gets buried, who gets attention, and who gets erased. But they're not rewarding what's thoughtful or useful. They're rewarding what spreads, and that often means outrage, drama, or moral panic. Post something nuanced and calm, it probably disappears. Start a fight, take a stand, go viral. Over time, we learn the rules, not because they're published, but because we feel their impact, so we play along just to be seen. And it doesn't stop at social media. Algorithms now screen job applications, flag resumes, recommend who gets housing, even determine security risks. You may never get an explanation, just a rejection. And it's not a person saying no, it's a machine. There's no official social credit score, but the judgment is still happening. Silently, automatically, and with real-world consequences. All of this changes not just how we act, but who we are. Social media used to be about expression, now it's about presentation. We curate our lives, the right photos, the right opinions, the right tone. Not because we're being fake, but because we've learned that the system rewards a certain kind of self. We call it personal branding, but what it really means is turn yourself into content. Be likable, be consistent, be safe. Sociologist Irving Goffman once said life is a performance, but now the audience isn't just people, it's algorithms. And algorithms don't blink. You start to feel like you're always auditioning. Not for a job, for relevance. So where does this all go? What happens when your online clout becomes your resume? When your follower count decides whether you get hired, approved, or taken seriously? We're already there. We say cancel culture is just online, but real-world consequences are catching up. One bad tweet, one viral clip, one wrong opinion, and your opportunities shrink. So we start censoring ourselves, not because someone made us, but because we're afraid not to. Every photo, every comment, every joke gets run through the filter. Will this come back to bite me? And here's the irony. We talk about freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom to be ourselves. But if you're constantly self-monitoring just to survive online, is that freedom? We didn't reject the social credit system. We outsourced it. We gave it to corporations, wrapped it in likes, views, and engagement, and called it entertainment. So yeah, there's no central score, no government blacklist, no sci-fi dystopia. But we built something just as powerful, just as quiet, just as shaping. In the wildest part, we're still building it. Every post, every rating, every retweet. We're feeding the system. The system is watching us, learning from us, and eventually making decisions for us. The real question isn't, how do we stop it? It's, do we even realize we're already inside it?